it's pretty sad, but for those who understand Ken and Ryu, they can have themselves a blast. You may have noticed that I just finished talking about everyone up to Smash Ultimate's initial release roster, but we still have 8 more guests to go. Smash Ultimate DLC went pretty hard and came so close to doubling the amount of guest characters. Fighter Pass 1 was one away from being entirely guest characters, with the first one of them being announced before Smash Ultimate even released. And that first one was someone you never saw coming, Joker from Persona 5. This was definitely one of the more out there guests. He's one that you can still find reason for because of how loyal of a fan base the Persona franchise has, and based on how beloved Persona 5 specifically has become. So that kind of answers that same question of why him specifically that some may have had when Cloud was announced as the Final Fantasy rep. But there's a little bit more to this. The Persona franchise is actually a spin-off of the Shin Megami Tensei franchise, which has no representation in Smash Bros. That makes Persona the first ever spin-off franchise to get representation in Smash over the franchise it branched off of. It does admittedly make the whole decision of Joker in Smash a bit strange, but I guess it was just a lucky turn of events because of Sakurai's admiration for Persona 5. He has openly admitted to being a fan of the game and used some stylistic choices from that game when making certain elements of Smash Ultimate. I guess that makes him the wild card of the guest characters. After his inclusion, it seems like Persona 5 had an even bigger takeover than before, perfectly exemplifying the impact being in Smash Bros. Has on a franchise and characters. I'd say that's also due to how he is in-game. He has a very flashy, over-the-top anime-like style to his animations, giving him some more visual flair. Flair aside, he also has a moveset that many can utilize well. He's a very speedy character with many tools to keep combos going. And if that wasn't enough, he also has a gimmick where his persona comes out, giving him a new recovery and huge buffs to all of his attacks. It kind of reeks of overkill, making him a character who many see as top tier. Funny enough, his moves and this application of his persona gimmick don't actually echo the gameplay of Persona 5. It's mostly all original stuff brought together to make an interesting character who fans will see as worth their time and money. That's actually something you see a lot in Smash, but it's very common with RPG characters like Joker, considering how different RPG games are from fighting games. So they kind of just made their own thing, using the face of Persona 5, and while sticking in a ton of references and Easter eggs to the Persona series. And would you look at that, the character after Joker was yet another RPG character, but arguably one that was more recognizable and carried greater significance to gaming. The hero from Dragon Quest. The hero? A pretty questionable name coming from a character that came after a guy named Joker who wasn't the Clown Prince of Crime. The hero is a blanket name, like Pokemon Trainer or Villager. It's their way of linking 4 different Dragon Quest protagonists into one entity. It also saved them from having to make 3 Echo Fighters. It's still a bit strange because while the names are up to the players in their games, they have their own default names, like Link and Robin. They didn't call each of these 4 characters in one Minecraft person, so it's a bit odd they went this route when naming this character. But either way, here's the hero. Or the heroes. The default is the Luminary from the most recent Dragon Quest at the time, Dragon Quest XI. To make the character a little extra special, they also gave us 3 other heroes from previous games as alternate skins. There's Erdrick from Dragon Quest III, Solo from Dragon Quest IV, and 8 from Dragon Quest VIII. But what's so special about this whole Dragon Quest series? A question you'd never hear in Japan because this is one of the biggest and most influential JRPG franchises of all time. Dragon Quest is basically the pioneer of RPG games, so the other RPG titans in Smash, like Pokemon and Final Fantasy, would be nothing without Dragon Quest. And speaking of that RPG style, the hero is arguably the best character at bringing RPG gameplay elements into Smash. Again, RPGs are hard to translate into fighting games like Smash, but the hero achieved this with a few crazy ideas. Firstly, there's a 1 in 8 chance of landing a critical hit on a smash attack, which greatly increases the damage and knockback if landed. Most of the hero's special moves are chargeable and become different attacks with different strength and abilities based on how long you charge them. Kind of like taking the time to level up certain abilities or moves. But then there's what has to be the most insane move in all of Smash Bros. The down special. This move activates a move command box where you can pick one of 4 randomly selected moves or enhancements to use. This gives the hero a crazy amount of attacks and options to play around with. Some of them aren't all that powerful, but others pack some incredible power and utility. These magic attacks used for all of the hero's special moves, including the command select, all come at the cost of MP. You have a max of 100 MP, and different moves require a different amount of MP to use. MP will then come back as time goes on, or you can build it back faster by dealing physical attacks, which again are still stupidly strong. Because of that, if you play smart, the hero doesn't really have a weakness. As long as you keep an eye on your MP and don't go too crazy with too many risky strategies, he'll feel like the most overpowered character in the game. That, along with all of the randomness to him, makes some people try to push the hero away for being an unfair character. You still have to be strategic when using him for the most part, so going as far as to try banning the hero is a bit overboard. Besides, the hero's just a lot of dumb fun. How could you not love that? The hero was who kicked off Nintendo's presentation, while they closed it with another highly requested guest character, Rare's Banjo and Kazooie. Banjo and Kazooie have been requested ever since Smash 64. A lot of that had to do with timing, because before the turn of the millennia, Rare used to be a part of Nintendo. That's a big reason why they were responsible for giving us the Donkey Kong we see today, along with a lot of other classic and beloved franchises from the SNES and N64 era. One of their most beloved franchises at the time, and still to this day, is Banjo-Kazooie, a series primarily focused on 3D platforming with a collectathon focus and a lot of influence from Western cartoons. Seeing how Banjo and Kazooie were listed in and voted on in the Smash 2 polls and still close to Nintendo, it seemed like they could have had a shot at being in Melee. Unfortunately, during Melee's development, Rare was bought out by Microsoft, making collaborating to include Banjo and Kazooie much more difficult. Fans would still voice their opinions, saying that Banjo and Kazooie were better off with Nintendo and should find a way to return to their old family in Super Smash Bros. It would take 20 years of requesting this bear and bird duo before they'd finally get their dreams brought to reality. A dream that was shared by folks at Rare who expressed their joy upon their announcement. They even got Grant Kirkhope as a guest composer to make a new Spiral Mountain arrangement for Smash Ultimate's soundtrack. It was fantastic! Banjo and Kazooie made for a character, or characters, that blended very well with the cast. They didn't come with any big gimmicks, but still had the overall moveset design and lovable animations that it was almost like they were here the whole time. Instead of being over the top, it was more like a breath of fresh air, knowing that the demands weren't necessary anymore. These old friends had finally come home. With 3 guests in a row, fans were wondering if that momentum would continue. Their questions were answered with a mistakenly left trademark indicating that the next DLC character would be a new guest from SNK. So with that in mind, it was pretty clear who was up next. Terry Bogard from Fatal Fury and King of Fighters. SNK is a company known for many fighting games, with Terry Bogard acting kind of as their mascot. SNK is obviously a huge name in the fighting game Hall of Fame, but a huge quantity of fighting games wasn't the key to getting there. It was the quality and distribution of those games. SNK had their games in the arcades, but they also had their own consoles as well. The Neo Geo family of consoles helped bring fighting games to the homes of many fans, including fans in areas of the world that didn't see many fighting games in the 90s, like South America. They even had a console that was basically the Nintendo Switch long before the Nintendo Switch. The importance of SNK is also something that impacted Sakurai directly. Sakurai has stated that he's a fan of SNK's games, with him loving King of Fighters and the characters in them during the arcade days. In fact, he shared a story about a time when he was destroying one player in a match at the arcade, only to discover it was a couple that was completely new to the game and maybe even fighting games as a whole. It was partially because of this experience that Sakurai got the idea for Smash Bros. In the first place. I know I already talked about that when talking about the importance of Ryu, but that was when covering the broad genre of fighting games, not the specific series that helped play a huge role in us getting Smash Bros. In the first place. Terry Bogard served as more than a way of bringing Fatal Fury and King of Fighters into Smash Bros. SNK was shown a ton of love all the way back to Terry's initial reveal. They only had half of his trailer at the time, but that trailer was SNK references galore, paying tribute to several games and characters. Then you have the King of Fighters stage with 20 characters from various SNK games that can show up in the background to cheer on the fighters, just like the background characters seen in SNK fighting game arenas. Mine not included because cleavage. Then you get to the soundtrack, and if you thought Castlevania got a ton of love in terms of music, Terry brought with him 50 songs from multiple games in SNK's library. 50 songs! That's more than most other franchises in Smash, with only 4 playlists having more tracks. Maybe 5 if you count all the variations of the Street Fighter tracks. This was a collaboration done both out of Sakurai's admiration for SNK and SNK's admiration for Sakurai and Super Smash Bros. Terry's gameplay shares a lot of the same beats as Ryu and Ken, which was to be expected since they are all fighting game characters. So along with Terry bringing over his famous attacks, he also has command inputs for stronger specials and special canceling to keep the crazy combos coming. Unlike Ryu and Ken, however, they decided to go a different route when implementing Terry's super moves. Ryu and Ken both got 2 final smashes out of this, but Terry got himself a crazy new gimmick where upon reaching 100% damage, he can use the same command inputs from his home games to use Power Geyser and Buster Wolf as many times as he wants until he loses a stock or somehow heals below 100%. With access to 2 crazy powerful super moves that can be used as much as you want, it does something insane to add even more fun possibilities on how you can use this character, just as long as you're able to remember all of his inputs. Oh, and because we got 2 super moves in his standard moveset, they gave us a sick new move for his final smash that combines 3 of his coolest attacks into one awesome composite super. So you know, there's that too. It would take about a year later and a whole new Fighter's Pass to get the next new guest character. And this character kind of needed to be something big after the questionable reveals and inclusions of the 2 characters between Terry and the next guest. So, was this able to deliver something big? Considering this character broke Twitter upon their reveal, yeah. And of course, that character was Steve from Minecraft. Minecraft representation in Smash was heavily debated amongst fans ever since Minecraft took the world by storm. The main arguments against Minecraft representation mostly came from views of the Minecraft fanbase and exposure throughout the years. It's been heavily criticized for having a rather young and toxic audience thanks to its reputation online. Some see it as a minimal effort method to grow a fanbase of children on the internet. After all, it's no secret that Minecraft is and has been one of the most searched and viewed sources of content on platforms like YouTube. But that also highlights why it should be worthy of representation in Smash. Not just to lure in children and get more of their parents' cash, but because Minecraft is a monumental video game. If you somehow don't know, Minecraft is the highest selling video game of all time. It's a little over a decade old, and it still beats other gaming titans like GTA 5, Tetris, and even the original Super Mario Bros. With that in mind, yeah, I'd say Minecraft does deserve to be represented in Smash. I'd actually argue it to be a bit of a mistake not to try and get something from Minecraft into Smash, whether that be a character, stage, or even a single spirit. And to think it would take 5 years of deliberation until the Smash team would finally be granted the permission to bring Minecraft into Smash with an entire DLC pack and everything that came along with that. Included, of course, was Steve as a playable character, but he also kind of got the hero treatment, so Alex, Enderman, and the Minecraft zombie are also included as alternate skins. Steve ended up being a character that got maybe a little too much attention because they pretty much had to alter the entire game just to make their idea for his moveset work. It would definitely be weird to have a Minecraft fighter that didn't somehow utilize mining and crafting, but reworking every single stage to give him different materials to mine for based on each surface? Maybe that's a bit too crazy. But they pushed through, and it made for an interesting aspect to his moveset. Whether or not it was all worth it though? It helps when he has moves that require materials to make certain items or upgrades, but as a feature in a fighting game moveset, I'd argue it doesn't work. I have a hard time with Steve because of how awkward some of his moves are and how you're required to stop fighting in order to refill your resources and better your tools and weapons. It ends up taking me out of the match and instead makes me feel like I'm playing a game of catch-up. It makes getting the upper hand and keeping it difficult. I wonder if that's just a me problem, because apparently Steve is a broken character who many want banned in competitive play for being too overpowered. I guess for other players, they're capable of working with this moveset a little too well. So yeah, that kind of adds more to label Steve as a divisive character. Now the argument isn't whether Steve belongs in Smash or not, it's whether Steve's moveset is satisfactory or not. I know where I stand on that question. After Steve was revealed near the beginning of the second Fighter's Pass, it raised the question on if this momentum left by him would be carried or matched. Whether or not you believe it did depends based on who you ask. I'd argue the next fighter did, because during the 2020 Game Awards, we got a new guest that no one was expecting and blew minds all around. That being a second Final Fantasy VII rep in the form of that game's main antagonist, Sephiroth. Just from that reveal alone, it was clear that this was a godly accomplishment. A second rep from a series that the parent company is super stingy over? A character who obliterated not only Smash Ultimate's final boss, but also just about every last fan rule for what characters can be included? An iconic gaming character held as one of the most beloved gaming villains of all time? Yeah, Sephiroth was certainly a special character. Sephiroth's inclusion was met with quite a few questions. Why specifically Sephiroth? a second Final Fantasy VII character instead of a character from another Final Fantasy game. I kind of answered that a bit when going over Sephiroth's reveal, but yeah, it is still a bit strange that Final Fantasy in Smash is just Final Fantasy VII. I'd like to believe this comes from both the stinginess of Square Enix and a potential compromise reached by Nintendo and Square. I previously mentioned how difficult it had to have been for them to get Cloud, so now imagine how hard it was to get him back in Ultimate. Potentially, they reached an agreement to bring over all Final Fantasy VII representation from Smash 3DS and Wii U without players having to pay for it again. But later down the line, they'd have Sephiroth as a purchasable character to bring over what was lacking. Things like more music tracks and actual spirits. Or, based on the timeline of DLC planning, Sakurai tried to get Sora, but got Sephiroth instead as a compromise before they actually got the go-ahead for Sora. Which explains why Sora was thrown in all the way at the end of the second Fighter's Pass, and why the second Fighter's Pass has one more fighter than the first. The question of how this happened? Again, probably through lots of deliberation and compromises, but also because of how successful Smash Bros. And Cloud in Smash 3DS and Wii U were. Square knew Sakurai would be able to handle their IP's rights, and that they'd bring in plenty of sales. Sales aside, boy did Sakurai work some magic with Sephiroth. Thanks to Sephiroth, Final Fantasy VII also got a second stage, more than 2 music tracks, including remixes and tracks from the Final Fantasy VII Advent Children movie, spirit battles, and official FF7 artwork for them. Even Cloud gained something from this, with a reskinned Final Smash if you're using his Advent Children costume. Back to Sephiroth, his gameplay is pretty great. He exudes final boss energy with his animations and strength. Some of his moves hit like a truck and are made extra terrifying due to the range he has with his 8-foot sword. He isn't all-powerful though, because they made sure to give him some noticeable end lag on moves and make him as light as Kirby for the sake of keeping him balanced. Even then, the drawbacks aren't super noticeable, keeping him from being held back. It makes for a really fun character with moves and energy that make you feel like you're playing as the Sephiroth from Advent Children. Makes sense considering his whole trailer was Advent Children references galore. And let's not forget the Sephiroth challenge. On the Sakurai Presents video demoing Sephiroth, his release date was given, but along with that was the announcement of an update that same day where you could unlock Sephiroth after the presentation, a few days before his official release. In order to take advantage of this limited time offer, this update added a new mode called the Sephiroth Challenge. If you missed the feel of unlocking characters with how DLC character releases worked, this mode brought that back. Due to Sephiroth's final boss reputation, this mode has you face off against Sephiroth in a stamina match, where upon defeating him, you unlock Sephiroth, his stage, and the added FF7 music tracks. This had 3 difficulties: easy, medium, and very hard, but you only had to beat 1 in order to unlock everything. It was a super neat extra thing that they didn't need to add, but helped make Sephiroth's inclusion extra special. It was still cheesable, but fun nonetheless. That mode is unfortunately no longer available, but you can always recreate it yourself. I did, and made it even harder by giving him 999% to my 150% on a stage where you can't spike him or push him into the blast zone. How's that for a Sephiroth challenge? You know what felt a bit lacking in terms of guests? Surprisingly, it was a second guest character from Namco Bandai. Yes, that seems like an odd thing to see as lacking when there are plenty of other important video game companies that don't even have a single rep in Smash, but Namco had been working on the Smash Bros. Games ever since Smash 3DS and Wii U. Yes, Namco had Pac-Man, but their work made them pretty deserving and expected to have someone else of their own. And to think we'd have to wait until the second to last character added into Smash Ultimate for this to be met. That was when we got Kazuya Mishima from Tekken. An inclusion that seemed to make too much sense that it admittedly didn't make waves upon its reveal. That's not to say Kazuya and Tekken were bad inclusions, nowhere near that, but they kind of lacked that wow factor that most other guests brought, especially the two guests before Kazuya. Bringing Tekken into the Smash Bros. Family seemed right, as it's not just another Namco franchise, but one of the biggest fighting game franchises, so it fit into Nintendo's fighting game quite well. The thing is, we've been teased with Tekken representation in other ways all the way back to Smash 3DS and Wii U with a Heihachi Mii costume. Then, in Ultimate, they added a new Heihachi Easter egg in Pac-Man's Up Taunt, and later randomly brought the Heihachi Mii costume back to purchase again. Still, Tekken was a franchise that a lot of fans were waiting to finally get a playable character, that when it finally happened, it felt more like a "what took you so long" situation. There was still hype and shock since they re-released the Heihachi Mii costume before Kazuya, making it seem like we wouldn't be getting a Tekken fighter, but the hype and shock had a much weaker impact than it could have had. And even then, Kazuya was not really an out-there pick, but maybe a perplexing one to some Smash fans. See, Tekken doesn't really have one single main character, but rather a main family of characters. That family line being the Mishima bloodline, with the big three being Heihachi, his half-devil son Kazuya, and Kazuya's son Jin Kazama. So this gave us three big characters to choose from. Heihachi and Kazuya shared a lot of attacks, while Jin has a lot of his own unique ones, as he likes to distance himself from his family. With that in mind, maybe they thought they'd get more of a well-known moveset by going with either Heihachi or Kazuya. Many Smash fans would have thought Heihachi, due to him already being used to represent Tekken in Smash before with the aforementioned Mii costume and Pac-Man Easter egg, but the Smash team opted for Kazuya instead due to him having a bit more creativity in his moveset potential. In case you somehow didn't know by now, Kazuya is half devil. His mother was a devil, thus giving Kazuya superhuman strength and powers in the form of the devil gene. This is why Kazuya utilizes this devil transformation for his smash attacks and specials. Heihachi is just a super strong old man who's too stubborn to die, but Kazuya's out here shooting eye lasers and growing wings, so I guess that screams more potential for a Smash Bros. Moveset. Plus, Heihachi also had his time to shine in another platform fighter, PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale. I hope that's not the only reason Heihachi was passed up. Quick non-scripted update here. Yeah, I don't think that's the only reason Heihachi was passed up or anything like that. I think one of the biggest reasons that I didn't mention before, because this script actually is rather old, Heihachi's voice actor actually passed away in 2018. And after this, as a sign of respect, it seemed that Namco decided to actually retire the character of Heihachi. This is likely why there aren't any voice clips for Heihachi in Smash Bros, despite him appearing in the Mishima Dojo stage, and it's also the reason why Heihachi isn't anywhere in Tekken 8. Yes, the story of Tekken 7 ended with Heihachi being killed by Kazuya, but as I mentioned before, he's a character who has been too stubborn to die, but it seems like now, because of the actor passing away, they decided to actually have this be a permanent thing. So this could have actually been a factor that also made them go with Kazuya instead, as even if they wanted to go with Heihachi, which they actually considered Heihachi back for Smash 3DS and Wii U, they wouldn't want to now because of this whole idea of wanting to retire the character out of respect for the voice actor. Something I thought I'd just mention. The Devil Gene isn't the only thing Kazuya's got going for him, because he ended up being the most complex fighting game guest character in Smash. Kazuya has maybe too many attacks. He has plenty of attacks and combos in Tekken, but they really wanted to fit as many as possible in Smash. To do this, they gave him 8 different standing tilt attacks. This means he has a lot of potential for what he can throw out and string together. They also threw in some command inputs to do his signature Tekken Wave Dash and Electric Wind God Fist just for good measure. They did some sillier things like making one of his most complex combos his standard jab, but also some awesome things like throws with similar camera effects to that of Tekken throws. He's also got a Tekken Rage gimmick because I guess they needed to throw in that too. They really didn't know when to stop with this moveset. Kazuya, being this huge bag of tricks character with a lot of power to boot, ended up being a fighter that can be pretty tough for a lot to manage. That's not too surprising considering he's probably more complex than Ryu, Ken, and Terry combined. Still, when people master Kazuya, he can be a serious threat. Even past the fact that a Kazuya CPU set to level 9 is insane even for level 9 CPU standards, players who use Kazuya in competitive show that he's a near unstoppable threat when mastered. It's gotten to the point where people wanted to ban him along with Steve. Those two are just that crazy. There is still a skill ceiling to get past though, so it's not really a case of pick this character up randomly and decimate everyone that comes near you. Kazuya can be pretty brain-boggling without practice. But who knows, maybe you'll get the hang of Kazuya and find yourself winning with him. Just be prepared to be disappointed once you get to his victory screens. Why they thought it would be a good idea to give him no victory theme, I have no idea. All good things have to come to an end though. But how would they approach ending DLC for Smash Ultimate? There wasn't a big rigged ballot this time, so how did they decide to close it out? By this point, just about all fan rules had been completely shattered, right? Well, there was still one that didn't last long, as it was finally broken by the final impossible character, Sora from Kingdom Hearts. Whether you like Sora or not, this inclusion was still objectively big and impressive because there were always doubts on whether or not he'd get a chance because of his parents. More specifically, everyone was concerned when it came to Disney because yes, Sora is a Disney character in Smash. Disney's obviously known for not video games and also being high off its own fumes. Calling Disney a colossal company would be an understatement, but that also means they often demand a lot of control and money if one were to consider using their IP. Strangely enough, Disney was rather lax about the idea of Sora in Smash. It was the other parent that was being overprotective. If you aren't familiar with Sora or Kingdom Hearts, it's a collaborative spin-off between Square Enix and Disney, merging the worlds of Final Fantasy and Disney's many franchises. Sora was made to be an original protagonist, fighting alongside Goofy, Donald Duck, and various other Final Fantasy and Disney faces. Because of this, Sora is half Square, half Disney. Would someone this closely linked to Disney still be considered a viable contender for Smash Bros? It seems many people didn't care, seeing how Sora was apparently the true winner of the Smash 3DS and Wii U fighter ballot, despite what 2015 Sakurai would have you believe. Watch him come back in 2027 revealing someone completely different was the ballot winner. He lied to us about that once. Who says he didn't do that again? So that should at least show that there was high demand for Sora, but why did it take so long to get him in? I guess it's time to pick on Square some more. Square, being just as stingy as Disney, actually more stingy than Disney in this case, wouldn't budge on allowing Sora in Smash. It took all of the votes from the ballot, seeing how successful Cloud's DLC in Smash 3DS and Wii U was, and the unmistakable success of Smash Ultimate for Square to finally hand the keys over to the Smash team. It's possible that they finally budged rather late into the planning stages of Fighter Pass 2, hence why this pass randomly has one more character than the first, and possibly why it even has Sephiroth in the first place. Sephiroth probably being given the green light as a substitute for Sora before finally coming around for the Kingdom Hearts boy. An impressive inclusion? Sure. A fully beloved one? There's no doubt that Sora was always a character people were split on. Much like Steve, it felt like you either loved this reveal or hated it. That's mainly due to stigmas and emotions toward his character and game series. As an actual fighter in Smash Bros, I feel like he doesn't keep any of that hype. He's got plenty of familiar moves and elements, but I feel like it doesn't do much in terms of making a fun and engaging fighting game moveset. Plenty of move slots are filled by the exact same 3-hit combo, and while that is apparently a lot like how Kingdom Hearts combat is, it still comes off as rather uninteresting and lazy. Especially when looking at how much love and the sheer amount of moves the previous fighter's moveset got. Maybe this can serve as more evidence to Sora being stuffed into the end of the DLC at the last minute. He's also extremely floaty, again matching the theme of Kingdom Hearts, but it feels a bit out of place in Smash and makes playing as him a bit perplexing. And this comes from someone who can use other floaty characters like Yoshi and Mewtwo with no problem and still enjoy himself. But hey, you got your Disney character in Smash. Guess that means we better prepare ourselves to roll out the red carpet for Goku in the next Smash game. At this point, it's only a matter of time. So now that we went over all of the guests, it's time for the difficult job of actually deciding which one was the overall best. Right off the bat, we can eliminate some of the more divisive characters like Bayonetta, Steve, and Sora. While they all carry their own importance, it's hard to argue that a guest like these would be best when they still have a large number of people not on board with them. Similarly, if they have other controversial aspects, like when it comes to movesets, that can also hold them back. So characters like Pac-Man, Simon, and Kazuya would also have a harder time of earning that title of best. Gameplay is most important when it comes to the actual game part, so if fans believe some aspects don't work well, it lessens the love and impact of the guests over time. The best guests should have also left a massive impact on the series just from their appearance alone. For instance, would you say Richter brought as big of a change as Sephiroth? I don't think so. The best guest has to be one that all of the others practically bow down to, and while it might seem like a cheap answer, I'd have to elect Solid Snake and Sonic the Hedgehog as the runner-ups for the crown. I know, very original to choose one of the first two guests in the entire series, but when you really think about it, these two were overall the most influential. The landscape of guests in Smash might not have been the same had it not been for what these two brought to the table. Now it was even harder to choose between these two because how the hell do you do that? But in the end, there could only be one best, and that honor goes to Solid Snake. And it's hard to explain, but it just feels right in so many ways saying that. Again, if you aren't aware of just how important Metal Gear and Solid Snake are to Smash and gaming as a whole, you might think this decision doesn't go beyond Snake being the first ever guest. So many games look to the Metal Gear series for inspirations on how to stylize and present their games and their stories. To say this series always strive to go above and beyond would be an understatement. So to see so many games and developers take inspiration from that is nothing less than an honor. Sakurai deciding to represent this beloved series in Super Smash Bros. Must have put quite a lot of pressure on him. Sakurai had no guest baseline due to this being the first guest, so he handled this the only way he knew he could, as a fan. Sakurai, like the gaming nerd he is, designed Snake in a way that feels like he was fanboying out the entire time he was creating everything Metal Gear related for Smash. From the design of Snake and his moveset being a mixture of elements throughout his entire history, to nailing his personality and mannerisms, to incredible references and bonus features that weren't necessary but were more than welcomed. This was Sakurai embracing the memes passed on to him from Metal Gear. The drive to go above and beyond for a franchise that always went above and beyond. This created the baseline that Sakurai was capable and more than willing to go the extra mile with any and all guests. And doing that with Metal Gear and a face as big as Solid Snake definitely caught the attention of many. Case in point, Sega. Remember how Sega initially reached out to Nintendo to feature Sonic and Melee? Well, when Nintendo went back to ask if the proposal still stood for the next Smash game, Sega declined. It wasn't until later into Brawl's development that Sega changed their minds, resulting in Brawl being delayed to throw Sonic in. Think about that for a minute. It's likely Sega made this turnaround after the news of Nintendo featuring Solid Snake in Smash Bros. Reached them. After all, if Nintendo could make a deal with Konami to include such an icon, it's probably worth collaborating with them as well for our own icon. I think this is what a lot of developers thought once Snake showed his face in Brawl. Hence why third-party craze became so big among fans and third-party developers. I think that explains why I put Snake above Sonic. There's a chance we could have never gotten him or any of these other guests had it not been for the waves made by Snake. And it feels nothing short of perfect to be saying that about this legendary soldier. A character who's been through hell and back with a history intertwined with the legendary Big Boss. A character used as everyone's tool but ended up learning what it means to be free and achieve peace. A character known for mastery of tactical adaptation to overcome any obstacle. And most importantly, a character who perfectly passes those memes onto the players who take control of him. This honor of Best Smash Bros. Guest was well deserved.
You're pretty good.
You're pretty good.
Pretty good.
But what do you think? Who do you believe is Smash's best guest character? What are your thoughts on all of the guests? Let me know in the comments below. As always, thank you for watching. Don't forget to do the typical YouTube stuff if you enjoyed this video. Like the video, subscribe, ring the bell for notifications, and if you want to support the channel and get some neat perks, consider clicking the join button and seeing how you can become a channel member today.